A good day, too. It was called No Collusion, No Obstruction. I'm having this hoax. It should never happen to another president again.
Flynn was secretly communicating with Russian officials.
We want to know by what authority did General Flynn have these conversations?
He was targeted by the Obama administration, and he was targeted in order to try and take down a president.
Here we go. The breaking news down in Washington. General Michael Flynn will be in court 1 hour from now. District Court in Washington, D.C.
Breaking news in the Russia investigation.
Major development in the Russia investigation.
Now clear that the attention of Robert Mueller is, for the time being at least, bearing down on Mike Flynn.
The FBI set out to interview General Michael Flynn when they had no predicate for any investigation of any crime. We were pleased to learn yesterday that the Justice Department moved to drop the case against General Michael Flynn. Though it took several years, it is encouraging to see that justice finally prevailed.
You have to understand, we first went through Russia. It was all bull.
The U.S. Justice Department has dropped all charges with prejudice against President Trump's former national security advisor, General Michael Flynn. General Flynn was the highest-ranking Trump official charged following special counsel Robert Mueller's nearly 2-year-long investigation into alleged Russian interference in the U.S. election in 2016. Now, the U.S. Attorney General has said that the Department of Justice is correcting a horrible wrong. And one thing's for sure, it is a legal finding that will reverberate beyond the political divide that has polarized the nation amidst the ultimately failed attempt to remove Donald Trump from the presidency. And for the first time, a former business associate of General Flynn, Ekem Alptekin, a central figure in the investigation, is speaking out to the world to tell his side of the story. Ekem was also charged alongside General Flynn, but maintains his innocence. He believes that he was a victim of a partisan conspiracy that attempted to brand him and General Flynn as, quote, foreign agents, and what Ekem says was a much wider Machiavellian plot unfolding in America's capital. Prior to Trump winning the U.S. election, Ekem had hired the services of the Flynn Intel Group to expose the Fethullah Gulen network, also known as FETÖ, operating on U.S. soil. At the time, Ekem was a businessman who was serving as the chairman of the Turkey-U.S. Business Council.
Fethullah Gulen and his followers are responsible for terrorizing millions of Turkish citizens. If the United States is sincere, then it needs to stop tolerating Fethullah Gulen's presence in the United States.
So 3 years ago in Washington, D.C., you found yourself in the midst of what would eventually become a complicated web of international intrigue. You, alongside your former business partner, General Michael Flynn, were accused of conspiring. But now, General Flynn has been vindicated. All charges have been dropped. Do you feel that you have been vindicated, that justice has been served?
They had a company called the Flynn Intel Group, which I trusted very much because of the general's reputation, and because Bijan Kian, the other partner, was a good friend of mine, with whom I interacted regularly, and I know both men to be men of integrity. In July 2016, Turkey suffered a coup attempt, a very violent coup attempt, with our own F-16 shooting at civilians, hundreds of people dying, thousands wounded. So that was a major trauma for us, comparable, I think, to maybe 9/11 for the American psychology. So right after that coup, of course, my friend Bijan Kian called me to see if we were okay, and we started discussing. And we were already talking about the Flynn Intel Group, if there was something that we could do together commercially, maybe open a Turkey office, things like that. And when the coup happened, it was sort of all bets were off. And we were talking about, what can we do? What should the government of Turkey do? And it was my very firm belief, a belief I still hold, that the government of Turkey, instead of trying to explain a very complex story about what happened in Turkey. The government of Turkey should try and expose this organization, the Gulenist movement, or we want to call them, we call them FETÖ. I believe that the right way to go was to commission independent, objective research in the United States. So you could expose them to the American public for what they're doing in the United States.
Ekim had dedicated himself to strengthen U.S.-Turkish bilateral relations and to pull back the curtains on FETÖ's U.S. operations. Viewed by many as little more than a cult, FETÖ is accused by the Turkish government of being behind the failed 2016 coup in Turkey.
This organization is not just what they pretend to be. They have a front office and they have a back office. In the front office, there are all these legitimate organizations, different fronts, different foundations, schools with great names, purposefully chosen names that will make them look very accessible, transparent, and positive. But in the back office, it's really a very secretive cult that has made it their mission in life to be in power, not through elections and by political engagement, but by infiltrating into certain positions, infiltrating into certain systems. And one system they've infiltrated is the American charter school system. They are committing visa fraud. What I mean with this is they are getting H-1B visas, and they've applied for and received more visas than Google, for example, which makes no sense if you think about it. Because if you look at the purpose of the H-1B visa, it's really when you need to bring in technical expertise from abroad.
On November 8th, General Flynn published an op-ed outlining the national security dangers posed by FETÖ. The op-ed would eventually be used by prosecutors to accuse Flynn of conspiring as a foreign agent on behalf of Turkey.
The day this op-ed by General Flynn came out, where he equated this leader of this cult with Osama bin Laden, and rightfully so, what I worried would happen happened. It's that these Gulenists understood, he came into their radar. They understood that if he would be in any position of power, that they wouldn't be able to continue all of the illegal things that they're doing. So there's been absolutely no interaction. The government of Turkey did not know about this op-ed. They did not pay for it. I knew about it 2 days in advance. I advised against it.
He would soon find himself in the crosshairs of special counsel prosecutors who were eager to build a case against General Flynn.
What I did happens in D.C. every day. I have no relationship to the Trump campaign. I never coordinated anything with the Trump White House or the transition team. General Flynn never coordinated anything with me after he assumed a national position after the election. The only reason General Flynn is targeted is because of his association with Donald Trump. If Hillary Clinton had won the election, we wouldn't be talking about this. None of this. And I think this is becoming increasingly clear for people who have not voted for Trump. And it should be. It should be very concerning for every American that an elected president has been ducking bullets since his first day in office. It's actually immediately after he was elected, even during the transition, and is not allowed to govern, basically, because of all these false accusations. And I'm collateral damage because of my association with General Flynn.
Ekim and the exoneration that he so badly seeks are the last piece of a story that reads like a political thriller, but one with very real consequences.
And if you then go back to the origin of this entire Russiagate issue, they basically called President Trump an asset of Russia. They called me an asset of Russia, not just of Turkey. And if you look at how this entire Russiagate issue started with a report that was commissioned and paid for by the Clinton campaign. So the Clinton campaign hired a former spy to do some Oppo research that we now know was largely based on absolute nonsense. So it was fake news, or it was dirt that wasn't true. And then they used this report to get FISA warrants so they could spy on people in the Trump campaign. The very well-known Gulenists have donated heavily, not just to the Clinton campaign, but also to the Clinton Foundation. They bet on Hillary Clinton winning the presidency. And when they saw on election day that the right-hand man of President Trump saw them for what they really are, which is a criminal, organized crime, terrorist cult operating globally. And when they saw that, they panicked. Gulenists played a role in creating so much smoke about General Flynn, none of it was true. There's not a shred of basis to it.
Ekim still finds himself in limbo and wants his old life back. Separated from his family who live abroad, he wants to set the record straight.
Look, I always lived by my own ideas and principles, and I'm willing to die by them. So I don't expect any sympathy in terms of me commissioning research about these guns. I would have done it again. I will do it again. I'm still researching them, and it's not something I will apologize for. There is an organized effort to make me look like a criminal so they can get to General Flynn. And in the end, my guess is they want to get to Donald Trump. Most of the people at home who are watching this think, how I would think maybe a couple of years back, is that if you're innocent, go and defend yourself. But if you have 3 children and you're already financially strained because of what happened for the last 3 years, and you have to keep your family alive, your employees alive, your companies alive, your children alive, it's not that easy to just go and surrender to a court in what obviously is a very politicized case.
Compounding Ekim's fears that the deck was stacked against him and General Flynn were the bombshell revelations of recently declassified handwritten notes of the FBI's former head of counterintelligence.
As you saw in that message that the head of FBI counterintelligence wrote internally, says, what is our goal here? Is it truth, admission, or is it get him to lie so we can prosecute and then get him fired? Is that what the average citizen wants the FBI to be engaged in?
Intelligence collected by the National Security Agency may have also been used by former Obama administration officials for domestic political purposes to go after General Flynn.
Look at what we know. Why do you think? An ambassador to the United Nations, Samantha Power, needed to unmask a phone call, the American in the phone call with the Russian ambassador, a week before the election. I mean, what possibly could be on her plate that, in terms of national security, that was so important, that was so critical, that she needed to unmask an American citizen? Because we now know that there was nothing in these transcripts that was illegal or unethical. That's also why we know that General Flynn had no reason to lie. I think the Obama administration was so traumatized with the concept of a potential Trump presidency that they lost their way.
And the bad blood ran deep.
Obamagate. It's been going on for a long time. It's been going on from before I even got elected. And it's a disgrace that it happened. And if you look at what's gone on, and if you look at now all of this information that's being released, and from what I understand, that's only the beginning. Some terrible things happened, and it should never be allowed to happen in our country again.
Newly declassified, highly sensitive documents released by President Trump's Director of National Intelligence, Richard Grenell, raised serious red flags among lawmakers.
In addition to Vice President Biden, James Clapper, James Comey, John Brennan, Samantha Powers, and the President's Chief of Staff all individually asked to unmask General Flynn and to listen to his phone conversation. Intriguingly, a dozen more administration officials all chose to unmask General Flynn. Why is this important? Unmasking involves revealing the identity of an American's private phone conversation without a constitutional warrant to eavesdrop on that conversation. What makes this even more troubling is that this American was a high-ranking advisor to an incoming president of the opposite party.
As a consequence, Ekim's life remains on hold.
You don't know what this does until it happens to you. Is that I've lost my businesses in the sense that I was in the middle of a major construction project.
U.S. media had reported that Ekim had organized a meeting between Turkish officials and former CIA Director Jim Woolsey to discuss a so-called operation to kidnap radical cleric Fethullah Gulen from his compound in Pennsylvania.
I was convicted in the media first. It becomes impossible almost to try and explain yourself to people afterwards, especially because people like Jim Woolsey added fuel to this fire, coming out with outrageous allegations. He's lying.
Akim's journey has been thrown into disarray by the whirlwinds of political machinations, and he wants his name cleared.
But the truth has a tendency of coming out, and it will come out. They want to put me in jail for 35 years. They've already ruined my career, my reputation, my family life. I've waited and I've been patient for a very, very long time. And it will go into history as a black page in American democracy. I have no doubt.